the Cat Kanavos Show on New Earth Television.
Welcome to the Cat Kanavos Show, everyone. I am your host, Kathleen O'Keefe Kanavos, but my friends all call me Kat, so I hope you will too. We have a great show for you tonight, and as you can see behind me, I am the best-selling, award-winning author of multiple books. Most of them deal with health and wellness, dreams that can save your life, surviving Cancerland, and our latest one, Chaos to Clarity, which we will be talking about tonight with our three of our authors in the book. So welcome to the show. You know, right now our world is experiencing a tremendous amount of change that's affecting all of us because we're all interconnected by universal oneness. And we get affected by the butterfly effect is what it's called, which basically means if there's a little butterfly all the way over in China that flaps its little wings, we can feel it all the way over here. And when people from around the world are saddened, we can pick that up because we're all interconnected, not just by our hearts, but by our souls, because we are human beings and we are here on this earth plane. So also when the earth is changing and it cries out, we pick up that sound. So our authors tonight are Connie Bramer, and she's over there on the right. And let me tell you a little bit about Connie. She is the founder and president of Get Your Rack Back, Inc., and she's the author of How Connie Got Her Rack Back, and she is a speaker and a breast cancer survivor. So she's going to be telling us about her story in the book, Chaos to Clarity. Then we have Mel Greenberg, who is a mom, and she's a wife, and she's a writer, and she's the author of Running with Your Eyes Closed. And she has also survived breast cancer and empty nest. And my mother died of cancer, not breast cancer, but colon cancer. And so Mel has a similar story with her mother and her family. And then we have Peggy Miller. And Peggy Miller heads the Male Breast Cancer Coalition. Yes, men get breast cancer too. And so Peggy's going to be talking about her story in the book, which deals with her son. And I don't want to give any of the information away because the story is absolutely amazing. And when you hear these stories tonight, you are going to know that there is a higher power because that higher power was involved in these people's stories. And so Peggy is MBCC, which is the organization that Peggy is in charge of, is a nonprofit patient advocacy organization which educates about male breast cancer. So those of you who are watching tonight, if you go to my Kathleen O'Keefe Kanavos Facebook page, author speaker, even if you're watching the show later when it's not live anymore, you'll see the links to our three guests tonight that will take you to their Facebook pages. So all you have to, their website pages. All you have to do is click on those links. The link is on my Facebook page, Kathleen O'Keefe Kanavos, author speaker, and we have the links to all the websites for our three guests tonight, which are Connie Bramer, Mel Greenberg, and Peggy Miller. So thank you, ladies, for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having us.
So let's start with Peggy Miller, because Peggy, your story is just so profound. What you went through with your son and how you came out the other side. I mean, you actually had a little miracle happen in your story. So tell us briefly your story.
Well, it started way back in end of 2003, around April, where my son Brett found a lump, and he was 17 years old, going into senior year of high school. And that at the time we had no health insurance, and so it was crazy. And we're self-employed with our business, so we couldn't afford it. So I we had just started physical nights up at the high school. And I told Brett, we got all the best doctors in the Kansas City area, and you're going to have the top-notch doctors. At that physical night, we'll have them check this lump. And, you know, when he showed his dad the night, he came up one night watching TV, he says, what is this? Well, of course, as a mother who has always been told what lumps are, they're usually breast cancer. That's the first thing that went through my mind, but I shut my mouth for the first time, and I didn't say anything because I didn't want him to be scared. And I just said, we'll get it checked out. So at that physical night, he went into the private room to get checked, and the doctor who was in there pulls in 4 of the doctors. They come in, and they just look at it, scratching their heads and going, it's puberty, Brett. Don't worry about it. It'll go away, because they didn't get it. And I love our medical community, but we're also training them that, yes, men have breasts too. And yes, men can get breast cancer. And that's where it all started. But it took 7 years until age of 24. Once all my kids got health insurance, I shot out an email and I said, you know, I'll get you guys some doctor's appointments. Let's get you checked out. No, yeah, Brett, we're going to find out from a doctor what that lump is, because he still had it. What he hadn't told me, but he had told his dad a while before, when it was happening, that he had had discharge from his nipple for over 1.5 years. But he told his dad, and his dad says, oh, don't worry about it. That's nothing. Because even my husband didn't have a clue that discharge, we women know, because when we go to our primary care doctors or gynecologists, that's the first thing they tell us. You know, get your butt to a doctor if that's happening. But men don't even, still today in the world, a man in a physical, they do not check their breast. And that's what we have to change in this world. Or men have to start asking for breast self-exams from their doctors, or start doing it themselves. And what we've done, and this will look backwards, I'm going to show it to you, we've created breast self-exam cards, videos for men and women on our website on the proper way to do breast self-exams. And we do with HCA Midwest hospitals, which is 187 hospitals. They've partnered with us, and they now put it out in all their breast centers. And they even have a form in their breast centers. So when men have to come in for a mammogram, and yes, men can get mammograms, even though, like Brett said, Mom, are you kidding me that you women have to go through this every year? And I said, yes, isn't it fun? But they share it, and they have a form now strictly for a man, because normally men still, when they go to get a mammogram, the form says when it was your first menstrual period and when was your first pregnancy. And most men just immediately stop filling out the form and say, here, I can't fill out anymore. So even HCA Midwest hospitals and a few other hospitals in our area now in the Midwest have a form specifically for men.
So when we come back to you, I want to talk about the miracle that you received from all of this. And, you know, it's amazing, Peggy, the way, and all the stories in the book, including Connie's and Mel's, how when they faced their darkest hour, they immediately started helping others, whether they meant to do it or not. They just felt like they had to share what they knew to help others. And it is making a difference in the world. So Connie, tell us your chaos to clarity.
Well, one thing I wanted to say is I've been reading all the stories in Chaos to Clarity, and they're just woven together so beautifully, Kat. Like you and Patricia did such a great job on this book.
Oh, thank you.
There's a lot of parallels with Mel. And, you know, Mel, I lost my mom young too to breast cancer, and I always felt like it was coming for me too. When I read your story, I said, I can't wait to talk to you now, because it's like my life, you know? Yeah. So my mom was diagnosed at 47, died at 53, and struggled the entire 7 years. So she passed away when I was in my early 20s. So I was diagnosed just after my 39th birthday, and my kids were 7 and 8 at the time. And so I struggled, you know, I was a newly single mom of my own choosing. Thank God. And I went through it by myself with my kids, and it was a struggle for me to, you know, want to cook and do things to take care of my kids, but I did it because you do, when you're a mom, you do what you got to do to get through the day. You know, you were saying the same thing, Mel. So when I was well, and actually I wrote about all of my crazy cancer antics, like all the crazy stories, because I'm kind of a smart Alex. So I wrote all these funny things, and I put it all in a blog. And that was kind of like my support group. I didn't realize it at the time because people would write back to me, and it was just my support group. So when I was done with my cancer journey, so to speak, I stopped writing. And my friend said to me, I think if you put this in a book, it would help a lot of people. So I spent about a year writing my book. It was published in 2012, How Connie Got Her Rack Back. And then I started fundraising to help cancer patients. So in 2015, I founded Get Your Rack Back. And it's a misnomer because of the name, but we help men, women, and children with all types of cancers, and we provide them with gas and grocery gift cards and medical co-payments. And we have our 5th annual holiday stocking drive this coming weekend. And to date, we have stuffed and delivered over 1,500 holiday stockings to kids affected by cancer, either their parents or a sibling or themselves. So we work pretty diligently to do that, to give back. And that's something that, like we always say, you just feel this urge to give back and do more for others. And just like Peggy, like doing more for men. And my foundation has actually helped men with breast cancer also.
Yes.
Great. And Peggy, you're getting ready to do something next week on Wednesday, right? Hold up your little poster that you were showing me that was so beautifully done.
Right here. Can you see it?
Hold it up a little closer. There we go. It's because you've got it inside of a plastic container. It's real shiny, but
yes.
And where is it going to be, Peggy?
Okay, I'm attending next week. We have a booth at the San Antonio Breast Cancer Symposium, which is attended by over 10,000 breast specialists, patients, pharmaceutical companies, and this will be our 5th year having a booth there to talk about male breast cancer. And we're going to show the book because people need to know this happens.
This is the book she'll be showing, Chaos to Clarity. So Mel, tell us your Chaos to Clarity story, because you and Connie and Peggy all share so much in common.
Well, so much in common, and I commend you for your journey, Connie, so young. I was just shy of my 50th birthday, and it bothers me so much. So many stories, younger and younger women are being diagnosed, and I think the technology is better, but there's so many other factors, and it's just frightening and heartbreaking. So, I was actually 13 when my mom was diagnosed with her breast cancer, and through my teen years, watched her battle, and she passed just a week before her 50th birthday. So that was part of my story. And going forward, I was, like you mentioned, Connie, you kind of feel like you're destined to follow in those steps, or that's your fate, if you will. And so that turned into fear, to anxiety, and living with that fear. And so my story in the book is actually about facing that head on and how empowering that was and liberating, because the one thing that I feared the most actually happened, and it wasn't that bad, because then I got to, I approached it from the perspective of choosing how I would deal with the hand I had been dealt, rather than, I never felt like a victim, but I felt like I didn't have control over my future because it had been taken from me so young. So at that point, just before I turned 50, all of a sudden I felt like I had control, and I was very blessed with a strong family of support around me, my husband and my 2 sons. And that made a huge difference. I didn't have to weather it alone. So that makes a difference.
Well, so all of us here had cancer, because I'm a 3-time breast cancer survivor. So this is like such a little sister group here. I'm sorry, Connie, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say to Mel that I so related to when you said that you felt an immense relief when you were diagnosed, because for me, I always felt like it was like right here somewhere.
Yeah, hovering.
Coming for me. We're hovering. And boy, when I read your story, it just really hit home. And I think the thing for all three of us, honestly, and every story in this book, is that it's relatable to someone somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I found it to be such a great gift to read both of your stories and have it relate to myself.
Well, and
you know, that's a great gift, I thought.
Too, in reading the stories, they were all such, I mean, they were those life-altering moments that you can, you know, the road, which path do you take? And all were faced with darkness and fear and situations that could have turned out quite differently, but instead chose to embrace what was given and find a light in it and find their way through. And I think that was what was so inspiring to me reading the stories.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you know, I think that your stories are perfect examples of this. You know, reading stories of strife is good. You know, we all want to, we connect through that, and it makes us not feel alone. But when we read stories like yours and the stories in this book of chaos to clarity, the secret stories of transformational change, when we can read how people took their chaos and turned it into a positive aspect in their life and then became transformed by it and even better people because of it, that's a story that I personally want to read. I don't want to just read and cry. I want to read, cry, and then laugh and feel empowered by their power. And that's what all three of you have in your stories. And that's why we chose your stories to go in the book. We did not put every story in the books that came in. We didn't choose every single story. Patricia and I did not. We chose stories that empowered the reader, and your stories certainly did. So Peggy, starting with you, our last question, because we've got like 3 minutes, so please give me as quickly an answer as possible. What is the positive message in your story?
Well, the message that I have is, first of all, men, you do have breasts. That's the first thing that all of us need to let our men in our life know, that they need to be checking themselves. Because if they don't do a monthly self-exam, and if they find something, the second thing they have to do is get to a doctor. Because we know, I love all the men in my life. I have 3 sons and a husband. But guess what? The last thing they do is they take care of their health. They don't. So you need to let all the men in your life, because genetically, I have over 12 women cousins with breast cancer. I myself, I've had 2 biopsies, and thank God so far I don't have breast cancer. But guess what? Eventually that shoe's going to drop, because it's in my family line. But genetically, we don't have any of the mutations or genes running in our line of family, with over 12 other women cousins in my family. But also I have a niece also.
And
but
you now have a granddaughter. You have a miracle granddaughter.
We do, because Brett was told with his treatment he most likely would never father a child. He got married October the 20th, and by December the 5th last year, they announced that his wife, him, and Tasha were expecting the first grandbaby, who was born July 13th, and she's our first grandchild. And that is a miracle, because the doctors told us it wouldn't happen. Mm-hmm. And Brett knew that going into marriage, and so did his wife. Didn't think it was happening. And lo and behold, we have a beautiful God. It is. God is miracles. So don't ever believe. We are creating the medical miracles as human beings and cancer families that are surviving this, guys. Mm-hmm. And yes, miracles happen.
Yeah, so right after this show tonight with you guys, I'm going to be on my Dreaming Healing show, and I'm going to have Dr. Joan Borenchenko, Bernie Siegel, and Patricia Caganello on there, and it's going to be about miracles. So I'm going to mention your miracle on that show. So Peggy, what is the positive message that you got from all of this?
Not, first of all,
positive. Oh, I'm sorry, not Peggy. I'm sorry, Peggy. I meant Connie.
There.
Positive message I got from mine. I think from my story, without getting so into my story, I think it's important to have a sense of humor when you're facing difficult times. I mean, that was what obviously got me through mine, and how Connie got a rack back is, kind of a comedy a little bit. And to learn to live in the moment. I think that was the biggest lesson I learned as a cancer survivor. And I believe you're a survivor the moment you are diagnosed. And surviving the journey, I just had to learn to say, okay, I have to just get through the day. I have to get through the hour and through the day, and not worry about, next month.
Yeah.
And as a type A kind of person, which I am, and I get mad at myself when I fall back into that pattern where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm running like a, hamster on a wheel. And I get upset with myself and I say, take a breath, live in the moment. I always tell my kids that, live in the moment. And that's what my lesson was from my cancer journey.
Great. I love that. Mel, what was your positive message you got out of all this?
Out of mine was that regardless of what we come face to face with, what we can't control any of it. With what will be, but we can control how we deal with it. And that is the most empowering thing, and understanding that is absolutely where our control is, and the positive from it.
That's great. You're right. There's nothing we can do about a lot of things except us and the way we deal with it. So for those of you listening, if you want to get in touch with Peggy Miller, she's the head of the Male Breast Cancer Coalition. You can find her at malebreastcancercoalition.org. And Connie, you can find her at gyrb.org, which is getyourrackback.org. And Mel is at melmediacallc.com, and that's Mel Medilak. Is that right, Mel?
Mel Media.
Mel Media? Oh my gosh, okay. Oh, LLC, that's why the LLC is on there. Okay, so it's melmediallc.com, MELMEDIA LLC.com. And like I said, they're all on my Facebook page, Kathleen O'Keefe Kanavos, author speaker. You can go there, just click on it, it'll take you right there. So thank you all for watching the show tonight. Chaos to Clarity, by the way, has been discounted. The Kindle has. So go and get your Kindle while it is still discounted. I'm knocking out my light. I'm looking very dark. Get your Kindle, and it is an Amazon bestseller right now. It's #1 in new releases, and it's turning into #1 in a number of different categories. So Chaos to Clarity, Sacred Stories of Transformational Change. Thank you for being with us tonight, everyone. And tune in to my show that is going to be on Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, Dreaming Healing, because I'm going to have a lot of great people on that show. Good night.
Thank you for having us.